Yasodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamunatiravanachari Yamunatiravanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Radha Madhava Radhe Jaya Radha Radhanat Radha Radhanat Radhe Jaya Giri Govardhan Giri Govardhan Giri Govardhan Jaya Giri Govardhan Jaya Gora Nitai Gora Nitai Gora Nitai Jaya Gora Nitai Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jaya Prabhupada Shri Shri Radha Radhanath ki Shri Giri Govardhan ki Shri Shri Nitai Gaur Hari ki Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda ki Gaur Premanande Hari 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 Bo. Thank you very much, bro. Hare Krishna. Thank you so much to the program management for allowing the opportunity for some service by way of the class and the opportunity for my own purification. And thank you to the devotees who are here to give us the encouragement. Vancha kalpadarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyevacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavabhyo namo namaha. So, does everybody know the invocation to Shri Isopanisad? Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasyaya Purnamadhaya Purnam eva vashishyate. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So, we were fortunate last week. I came in the tail end though of the class given by Ranga Devi Mataji, speaking on mantra 7 and 6 rather, and we're going to continue with mantra 7. Can anyone recall some of the main points made in mantra 6, if you were here. At least there were 3 main things that were categorized. Who was here? 3 types of devotees. I'll give a Gagamata, remember? Say. Yes, that we discussed in that purport. Okay, good. The Kanishta, Madhyam and the Uttama Adhikari. And what was the main point of that verse, of that purport? Prabhupada, all the way he explained these 3 levels by which you can recognize devotees. But what was the point? Anybody? Rangadevi, you want to say? Yeah, the devotees are at different levels of practice, but ultimately the ultimate point is that the devotees should see everything in relation to the Lord. So we know that the preacher comes down to the Madhyam platform so he can make a distinction between the innocent and the envious, and therefore he can approach people accordingly. But still, in our practice of Krishna consciousness, we should see everything in relationship to the Supreme Lord. The same theme continues in this mantra 7, and we will talk about that just now. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangam Langayate Girim Yat Kripa Tamaham Vande Shri Guru Dinatarinam. So, just to give a global perspective on this book, Isopanisad, before we begin analyzing the chapter. So, Upanishad is a set of philosophical treatises in which the aspects of Brahman and Atma are described. And Upanishad, Nishad, sitting near, sitting, Upa, alongside, sitting alongside the feet of the Guru. But Srila Prabhupada, in the introduction of the book, on the title page, it describes Sri Isopanisad, and it's described there, that knowledge that brings one nearer to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. So, sitting near Upanishad. So the same idea. And why is that been translated like that? Is that because the Upanishad deals with very philosophical matters, then the impersonalists, the Mayavadis, have used the Upanishads to present their agenda of impersonalism. Because the personality is not really identified as Krishna, but this speaks of the Brahman, Brahmabhuta, and therefore the impersonalists, they conclude from that the ultimate destination is formless, and they use these arguments. But in the Upanishads itself, like the Isha Upanishad. Isha means the Supreme Lord. The Upanishad that's describing the Supreme Lord, as Prabhupada says, it brings one nearer to the Supreme Lord. That Isha Upanishad describes personal features of the Lord. And therefore amongst the Upanishads there are these texts that identify and emphasize that the Supreme Lord is personal. So Srila Prabhupada is describing Isha Upanishad, is translated and commented for our purposes of not being deviated by the arguments of the impersonalists based on their interpretation of the Upanishads. So there's a structure that we can try to... we taught this in Bhakti Shastri, and we gave a seminar on it as well. So it would have been good if I could have put this up, but perhaps we can just visualize that there's 3 parts to the actual Isha Upanishad itself. So the first part, the section 1, consists of mantras 1 to 8. So the first 8 mantras is section 1. And what's in there is that the section 1, verses 1 to 3, speaks about the prescribed practices for us. So, just a quick, you can see mantra 1, translation. Everything animate or inanimate that is within the universe is controlled and owned by the Lord. One should therefore accept only things necessary for himself which are set aside at his quota, and should not accept other things, knowing well to whom they belong. So there's there's practices for us. And then verses 4 to 5 is about the knowledge of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So we'll just look at one of the verses to get an idea. Mantra 5, the Supreme Lord walks and does not walk. He's far away, but he's very near as well. He's within everything, yet he's outside of everything. So you see, it's progressive. And then verses 6 to 8, it's knowledges and practices as revealed by the vision of a pure devotee. So if you go to mantra 6, he who systematically sees everything in relation to the Supreme Lord, who sees all living entities as his parts and parcels, and who sees the Supreme Lord within everything, never hates anyone or any being. So you can say the vision. And therefore in the purport, Srila Prabhupada speaks about the Uttama Avadhikari. And that continues into this section here as a description of the Mahabhagavat. Okay, so what I'd like you to do is, when we are reading, we're first going to read the purport, but I also want you to consider what is the focus? What is the focus of this mantra 7? What is the focus of it? And what is Srila Prabhupada's vision in terms of the focus? And what is your vision as a devotee in terms of the focus when you are interacting with others? So those will be the takeaway points, the kind of key points, learning points that you can extract from this. Otherwise, what is the use of just being philosophical with no application? So let us read mantra 7. Yasmin sarvani bhutani atma vaibhud vigjanatah tatra ko moha kahashoka ekadvam anupashyatah. Do you do the word for word as well? No? Yasmin, in the situation, sarvani, all, bhutani, living entities, atma, the chitkana, or spiritual spark, eva, only, abhut, exist as, vijanatah, of one who knows, Tatra, sorry, do that again. Tatra, therein, ka, what? Moha, illusion. Ka, what? Soka, anxiety. Ekadvam, oneness in quality. Anupasyata, of one who sees through authority, or one who sees constantly like that. The translation by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada and the purport or commentary that follows. One who always sees all living entities as spiritual sparks in quality one with the Lord becomes a true knower of things. What then can be illusion or anxiety for him? The purport. Except for the Madhyam Adhikari and the Uttama Adhikari discussed above, no one can correctly see the spiritual position of a living being. The living entities are qualitatively one with the Supreme Lord, just as the sparks of a fire are qualitatively one with the fire. Yet the sparks are not fire as far as quantity is concerned. For the quantity of heat and light present in the sparks is not equal to that in fire. The Mahabhagavat, the great devotee, sees oneness in the sense that he sees everything as the energy of the Supreme Lord. Since there's no difference between the energy and the energetic, there is a sense of oneness. Although from the analytical point of view, heat and light are different from fire, there is no meaning to the word fire without heat and light. In synthesis, therefore, heat, light, and fire are the same. In this mantra, the word ekadvam anupashyata indicates that one should see the unity of all living beings, of all living entities, from the viewpoint of the revealed scriptures. The individual sparks of the Supreme Whole, the Lord, possesses almost 80% of the known qualities of the whole, but they are not quantitatively equal to the Supreme Lord. These qualities are present in minute quantity, for the living entity is but a minute part and parcel of the Supreme Whole. To use another example, the quantity of salt present in a drop is never comparable to the quantity of salt present in the complete ocean. But the salt present in the drop is qualitatively equal in chemical composition to all the salt present in the ocean. If the individual living being were equal to the Supreme Lord, both qualitatively and quantitatively, there would be no question of his being under the influence of the material energy. In the previous mantras, it has already been discussed that no living beings, not even the powerful demigods, can surpass the Supreme Being in any respect. Therefore, ekadvam does not mean that a living being is equal in all respects to the Supreme Lord. It does, however, indicate that in a broader sense there is one interest. Just as in a family the interest of all members is one, or in the nation the national interest is one, although many different individual citizens. Since the living entities are all members of the same Supreme Family, their interest and that of the Supreme Being are not different. Every living being is the son of the Supreme Being. As stated in the Bhagavad Gita 7.5, all creatures throughout the universe, including birds, reptiles, ants, aquatics, trees, and so on, are emanations of the marginal potency of the Supreme Lord. Therefore, all of them belong to the family of the Supreme Being. There is no clash of interest. So the purport is just a page, 2 pages and a half. So we'll read the whole purport, because who could explain this better than Srila Prabhupada himself? The spiritual entities are meant for enjoyment, as stated in the Vedanta Sutra. Anandamayo abhasyat. Anandamayo abhyasat. By nature and constitution, every living being, including the Supreme Lord and each of his parts and parcels, is meant for eternal enjoyment. The living beings who are encaged in the material tabernacle are constantly seeking enjoyment, but they're seeking it on the wrong platform. Apart from the material platform is the spiritual platform, where the Supreme Being enjoys himself with his innumerable associates. On that platform, there is no trace of material qualities, and therefore that platform is called Nirguna. On the Nirguna platform, there is never a clash over the object of enjoyment. Here in the material world, there's always a clash between different individual beings because the proper center of enjoyment is missed. The real center of enjoyment is the Supreme Lord, who is the center of sublime and spiritual rasa dance. We're all meant to join him and enjoy life with one transcendental interest and without any clash. This is the highest platform of spiritual interest. And as soon as one realizes this perfect form of oneness, there can be no question of illusion, moha, or lamentation, shoka. A godless civilization arises from illusion, and the result of such a civilization is lamentation. A godless civilization such as that sponsored by modern politicians is always full of anxieties because it may be crushed at any moment. This is the law of nature. As stated in Bhagavad Gita 7:14, no one but those who surrender at the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord can surpass the stringent laws of nature. Thus, if we wish to get rid of all sorts of illusion and anxiety and create unity out of all diverse interests, we must bring God into all of our activities. The results of our activities must be used to serve the interests of the Lord and not for any other purpose. Only by serving the Lord's interest can we perceive Atma Bhuta interest mentioned herein. The Atma Bhuta interest mentioned in this mantra and the Brahma Bhuta interest mentioned in Bhagavad Gita 1854 are the one and the same. The Supreme Atma or soul is the Lord himself, and the minute Atma is the soul or living entity. The Supreme Atma or Paramatma alone maintains all the individual minute beings. For the Supreme Lord wants to derive pleasure out of their affection. The Father extends himself through his children and maintains them in order to derive pleasure. If the children obey the Father's will, family affairs will run smoothly, with one interest and a pleasing atmosphere. The same situation is transcendently arranged in the absolute family of the Parabrahman, the Supreme Spirit. The Parabrahman is much a person as the individual entities. Neither the Lord nor the living entities are impersonal. Such transcendental personalities are full of transcendental bliss, knowledge, and life eternal. That is the real position of spiritual existence. And as soon as one is cognizant of this transcendental position, he at once surrenders unto the lotus feet of the Supreme Being, Sri Krishna. But such a Mahatma, or great soul, is very rarely seen because such transcendental realization is achieved only after many, many births. Once it is attained, however, there is no longer any illusion or lamentation or miseries of material existence or birth, which we are all experienced in our present life. That is the information we get from this mantra, Shri Isopanisad. Shri Shri Radha Radhanath ki, Shri 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 Giriraj Govardhan ki, Shri Shri Nitai Gaura Hari ki, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So it's very simple yet complex at the same time, because you may say that you have heard these different analogies in different, circumstances, like the spark, drop of salt water, and all of that. So in the chapter itself, there is the analysis, the verse. We can analyze also that in the chapter there are 5 main, movements, or 5 areas. So the first one is that Srila Prabhupada establishes the Mahabhagavat and his vision. So in the first few lines, except for the Madhyama Adhikari and Uttama Adhikari discussed above, no one can correctly see the spiritual position of a living being. So of course the Madhyama Adhikari sees the spirit soul, he sees the envious and the innocent. So in that sense he's understanding that. And the Uttama Adhikari sees the spirit soul in every living entity, and he himself feels he's not advanced, but everybody else is. So those two. So except for those. So Srila Prabhupada is establishing the position of the Mahabhagavat and his vision. So in paragraph 1, it continues in that paragraph where Srila Prabhupada is actually focusing on the theme of this entire is Ekadvam. Ekadvam, oneness. And Anupashyataha. That through the eyes of scripture, through the parampara, how we try to understand this oneness. The reason is that the Mayavadis have a field day with this idea of oneness. But the scriptures, Srila Prabhupada is not only explaining the oneness in line with the personal understanding of Krishna, but is also saying Anupashyata, that you should take cognizance of what the scriptures are saying. So Srila Prabhupada is not only focusing on Isopanisad, but the entire Vedic canon that establishes Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So therefore in the verse it's emphasized, Anupashyata. So Ekadvam is the focus, and all of these analogies are actually helping us to understand the oneness and the simultaneous difference. So the sparks of the fire are qualitatively one with the fire. So we are qualitative. When the spark leaves the main fire and falls onto the, the hearth, the carpet, or the outside, just outside the fireplace, falls there, then it becomes extinguished, right? So when we leave the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that's what happens to us. We become covered by the ash. But the spark itself has the quality of the fire. So Prabhupada is saying in the purport, the energy and the energetic, although simultaneously different, but qualitatively they are the same, right? But quantitatively they are not. So there is that sense of oneness. So there's no meaning to the word fire without heat and light. But in analysis we can see heat, light and fire are different, but they are the same. So he's establishing this in that paragraph. In paragraph 2, then the Ekadvam Anupashyata is again very much emphasized in the first line. And here Prabhupada is emphasizing that we have to see the unity of all living beings and creatures through the authority of the revealed scriptures. And here he uses the example of the composition of salt in the salt, in a drop of seawater and the entire sea. So although the drop is minute, but the chemical composition of that salt is the same as the entire ocean. Now, we're just paraphrasing some of the main ideas, and we'll look at the key learning points from it in a short while. So, Prabhupada then says in that purport that the word ekadvam also, although means oneness, but we have to be mindful of the fact that the oneness does not apply, does not mean that the living being is equal in all respects. But we are equal in the one interest. And just as a family, there are another analogies given in that paragraph, just as a family may have a common interest. And if that common interest is served, then there is peace and happiness within the family. Otherwise, what will happen? We will get with the big C. Conflict. And that is why in this world, because there are those, all of us have different interests. And most of them are self-centered interests. Then there is conflict. Now, devotees are themselves not free from that, because we come into the movement and we are involved in practice of devotional service, but also we have a lot of self-centered interest, even in devotional service. It's very hard for us who have been conditioned over all these years with our minute independence to submit to particular instructions, authorities, etc., without maybe some dissension around it. Or even if you don't express it, it's going through in your mind. Who does he think he is, etc., etc., you know? So it's also in this process. So the self-centeredness, self-interest is there, and therefore the conflict in the world exists. However, if our interest aligns itself with the interest of the Supreme Lord, and what is that interest of the Supreme Lord? Is for us to engage in a relationship of affection with Him, which means devotional service, and serve Rishikesha, Rishikena Sevaya, Bhakti Ruchyate, that is, serving the senses of the Supreme Lord, not our own, then the interest of the Supreme Lord will be served, and the common family interest, which we all are, the family of the Supreme Lord, will be served, and there will be no conflict. So in the paragraph 3, then here again, Srila Prabhupada is saying that those who are engaged or encaged in the material tabernacle, encaged in our material existence, we are constantly seeking enjoyment but in the wrong platform. So again, our idea of enjoyment and seeking our self-interest is there, and on that platform there will be no real enjoyment. So Srila Prabhupada uses in this purport the word nirguna, and he uses that word to explain a context that is free from material qualities. So if we are in a situation of the spiritual context, then it is nirguna. There are no material qualities, and therefore on that platform there will never be a clash over the object of enjoyment, which was Krishna. Now Prabhupada uses the word nirguna here. There's a background to that, because the Mayavadis use the word nirguna to deny the personality of Godhead. Nirguna. Guna means, yes, qualities. Nama, Rupa, Guna, Lila. So they deny all that. Nirguna, no qualities. So they advocate that the supreme position or destination is nirgun. It's formless. no diversity, no differentiation. It's all one. So the word nirguna, Prabhupada is explaining here, the word nirguna is not referring to that situation. The word nirguna means without material qualities. So the Supreme Lord is nirguna, but He's personal and He's without material qualities. So that's how we can understand the use of nirguna in that. And then in the paragraphs like 3 and 4, Prabhupada here speaks about that, continuing from the last paragraph, that if we are situated on the material platform, then what will result is moha and shoka, illusion from which comes lamentation. And therefore in the next paragraph he introduces the idea that those who are on the material platform, they are a godless civilization and sponsored by the leaders of society who have an agenda to perpetuate that idea of a godless civilization because of increasing their material enjoyment and acquisitions. So, however, that, Prabhupada says, will be crushed at any moment. This is the law of nature. In Bhagavad Gita 7:14, only those who surrender to Krishna can cross behind it. Who knows the verse? I'll give you a start. Daivihi esa. All right. Very good. So, Daivihi esa gunamaya, mamaya duratyaya. That this divine energy of mind, consisting of the three modes of material nature, is very difficult to overcome. But those who have surrendered unto me, they can easily cross beyond it. So here Srila Prabhupada says in the purport then, only those who surrender to the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord can surpass the stringent laws of nature. Thus, if we have to wish to get rid of all sorts of illusion and anxiety and create unity, ekadvam, oneness, then we must bring God into all our activities. Devotees know that, right? So, Prabhupada continues that in the next paragraph. He introduces or brings the concept of Atma Bhuta and Brahma Bhuta. So the Atma Bhuta in this verse is not directly Atma Bhuta, but it is Atmai va Bhud, Atma Bhud, Atma Bhuta. So Atma Bhuta, interest, and the Brahma Bhuta, interest, mentioned in 1854. What is that verse? Brahma Bhuta Prashanatma na sochati na kankshati. Sama sarve bhuteshu mad bhaktim labate param. That Brahma Bhuta, the Brahma Bhuta means the Brahman platform. When one attains the Brahman platform, and that is not referring to Brahman as in the Mayavadi concept of Brahman, but is referring to the spiritual platform, Brahma Bhuta Prashanatma. So, what happens when there's Brahma Bhuta Prashanatma, when one attains to that platform? Then there is Na Sochati, Na Kankshati. There is no hankering or lamentation. So here in the purport, that Supreme Atma or soul, right? Or the Supreme Atma or soul is the Lord Himself. So the Atma Bhuta or the Brahma Bhuta platform is to attain to the platform of the Supreme Lord. And in that purport, in that verse, and Prabhupada uses the analogy of the Father, of the living entities. And if all of us are obedient to the Father's instruction, and of course we're speaking of the eternal spiritual Father, if we are obedient to the to those instructions, then what will happen? we will be na sochati, na kankshati. We will not be in moha, or will not be in shoka, illusion or lamentation, hankering and lamentation. So here is a very important point. The Father extends Himself through His children and maintains them in order to derive pleasure. Whose pleasure? Whose pleasure? Yours or mine? Krishna's. He's referring to that the living entity is actually created for Krishna's pleasure. That's our constitutional position. Devotional service is your constitutional position. That's why you say Krishna consciousness. And Krishna creates the variety for His pleasure, but gives us the independence also, because love means that, right? You have choice. If we're all just made to love Krishna by force and nothing else, there's no love there. So He gives us the choice. So, for Krishna's pleasure. And therefore, when the living entities act in the interest of the Supreme Lord, then the Father extends Himself through His children and maintains them in order to derive pleasure. So Krishna is most pleased. And then by His pleasure, the living entities are pleased. Our pleasure is dependent on the pleasure of the Supreme Lord. So, if the children obey the Father's will, family affairs will run smoothly. The same situation is transcendently arranged in the absolute family of the Parabrahman, the Supreme Spirit. So Prabhupada is using those words, Supreme Spirit, Parabrahman, because Mayavadis like to use those terms. But there's no understanding on their behalf of what is and who is the Parabrahman. And then in the last paragraph then, Prabhupada then reverts. He ties up. Prabhupada is so intelligent, so systematic, if you read through. He ties up the idea back to the Mahabhagavat. And he says there that that is the real position of the spiritual existence, that as soon as one is fully cognizant of his transcendental position, he at once surrenders to the lotus feet of the Supreme Being. But such a Mahatma, a great soul, is very rarely seen. So this is the Uttama Adhikari that is mentioned in the verse itself, right? The person who always sees all living entities as spiritual sparks is quality one with the Lord. In quality one with the Lord becomes a true knower of things. So the Mahabhagavad, the Uttama Adhikari, he sees. So obviously it's a position for us to aspire to. And even if one achieves that position in this world, one doesn't demonstrate that, walk around with the label that I am a Uttama Adhikari, right? Srila Prabhupada was here, and you could see, we knew, and from what we read and see about Prabhupada and hear about him from his disciples, that he is a Uttama Adhikari, right? But he did not reveal his symptoms, except now and then devotees got a glance. When he sang Jai Radha Madhava, just went into internal samadhi, and devotees sat quietly waiting. See? And had to come out of it and then continue the class. Or at some times when he's speaking, then Prabhupada would choke up with some tears. We hear some of those audio clips, very heartfelt, heart-touching when you hear. But my Guru Maharaj sent all of you, and then he breaks down, crying. So these, we can see Srila Prabhupada is at that position. One evidence of Srila Prabhupada's position really stood out for me when I first read was when Prabhupada was living in John Lennon's estate, and then he would chant in a bower of trees on the estate. He would chant there. And then when they had to leave the estate, they were leaving, the devotees were going. So the car drove by, and then Prabhupada asked the driver to stop. He got off, he went to those trees and it looked like he was speaking to them or something. Then he left. Then the next day a storm hit it and all the trees collapsed. All those trees. He released all of them. It's recorded, amazing. So Prabhupada's position is undoubtedly, all these symptoms that Prabhupada is explaining, it applies to him. So what are some of the key learning points we can take away is that, you see, the Mayavadis, they promote oneness and they promote this because, and we also have the understanding, devotee has the understanding that we are one, we're similar in nature to the Supreme Lord, we are spiritual, we are Satchit Ananda, we have this position of oneness, and therefore, because I am a spirit, I'm not made of matter, I'm a spirit soul, and therefore I can be detached from this matter. So they focus on detachment. It's good, it's a wonderful idea to focus on detachment, quality. We are one in quality with the Supreme Lord. But it's not complete, because the other part of it is quality and quantity. And if you focus on quality only and detachment, then you become proud. You become proud of your detachment, and you become proud of your oneness, and therefore the Mayavadis call themselves, I am God. Because they think they are one in quality with the Supreme Lord. We're all formless. But when we think of quantity, the devotee knows that I'm qualitatively, but quantitatively I'm not. And I should begin with a position of humility that comes from that. I'm quantitative, I'm insignificant, I'm very small. Quantitatively, I'm not at all. So this idea, we can think about some of the instructions given. Like if you take Shikshastakam, what's the third verse? Trinad, bolo everyone. Together, 1, 2, 3. Trinad api sunichena taroreva shahishnuna amanina manadena kirtaniya sada hari. So, the position, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu explains to Sanatana Goswami, the position of humility first. And when you engage in the position of with humility, then you are inclined to do service. And when you're inclined to do service in the position of humility, then you get a higher taste. And then the higher taste also facilitates your humility. Right? So, then we see from that engagement in service, what will come? Jnana and Vairagya. Knowledge and the detachment will come because you engage from a position of humility. There's no need to artificially engage in detachment like the Mayavadis. You engage in service, Jnana and Vairagya. So therefore the next verse in Shikshastakam is what? Na Oh, sorry, not that. Further down. Na dhanam, na janam, na sundarim. What is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu saying? That only from the position of humility, then we can pray to be detached from wealth, na dhanam, na janam, followers, women. So it's from the position of humility. Now what the Mayavadis are doing, they're trying to become detached artificially. And there's no higher taste for them. So therefore, they become vulnerable to pride. And eventually they fall down. Because the last snare of Maya is to think you're God. So they fall down. So in this purport, the oneness here is referring to the oneness of quality and understanding the position of quantity. And therefore, when we know our position in relation to quantity, then we remain humble. So we are one insignificant drop. Okay? So this is very important that Srila Prabhupada is bringing these analogies of the drop of the ocean and so on. And there's a very, very common Mayavadi understanding, and we hear it in society also, that related to this idea of drop in the ocean, is that the rivers, all the rivers are flowing to the ocean, and this idea of merging in the ocean, that all is one, all the parts are one, they're all merging into the ocean. But the devotee's understanding of that is that we don't consider so much the idea of the merging, which refers to the formless idea of nirguna that Mayavadis have. We don't look at it that way. We look at the flow of the river to the ocean. And the flow of the river is what Queen Kunti is saying to Krishna when he's leaving. That, my dear Lord, let my consciousness flow towards you like the Ganga flows to the ocean. So we flow, our idea is to flow to the Lord constantly, and it's dynamic. And therefore, although we are individuals and we can serve in this idea of unity in diversity, right? We serve with our diverse talents and so on. But there's also diversity in unity. Right? So we understand this flow is dynamic, and therefore the devotee's consciousness is always thinking how to flow, not to merge, but how to flow. Nothing can stop that river, that torrent. Obstacles either goes over it, around it, and in our devotional service there will be a lot of obstacles, lots of things. But we know that Krishna is that vast ocean. We are the drop, we are moving towards that. So some ideas about understanding this oneness. Even when you find the Brahma Patnis went to serve Krishna and Balaram. The Brahmins were all very busy in their pujas. You remember that pastime? Krishna and Balaram were hungry, sent the cowherd boys. But the Brahmins said, no, we're busy now. We're chanting, we're doing mantras, you go. So they went through the Patnis. And as soon as the Brahmin Patnis heard Krishna and Balaram come, they sent all the beautiful, lovely prasad. They themselves came. And they want to serve personally. And then Krishna asked them, then now they can return. And they said, how can the river which has flowed to the ocean return to the mountain? But Krishna said, I have accepted your love and devotion, it's in your heart. You've given it to me, you've achieved your goal. You go back, you have social obligations, you perform them. So similarly, we have, many of us are not fully surrendered like the residents of Sri Sri Radharanath gave up their lives. We live outside, but we appreciate you very much. And therefore, we come here for inspiration. And we see you and our hearts become joyous. So, we have social obligations. But the streams of our thought, mind and heart are always towards Krishna. Not to merge, but in service. Alright? So Srila Prabhupada, when he went to Boston, and if there anybody on social media watching, sorry, I got 1 minute and then you'll be disconnected. done. 8:30 it cuts off automatically. So Srila Prabhupada, he went to Boston, and what was the poem? Makine Bhagavata Dharma. He created this poem that, my dear Lord, I'll paraphrase, why you've brought me here. This West is full of those who are sinful. How will I deliver this message to them? But I am a puppet in your hand, so you make me dance. So, America is considered land of happiness, milk, what is it? Land of milk and honey. So much of facilities there, enjoyment and so on. But Srila Prabhupada's vision was in line with the interest of the Supreme Lord, because he saw that these entities, although they have all of these facilities, they are not happy. They are miserable. And he saw then the potential of delivering these entities and making them devotees. Ekadvam. He saw the oneness in this is that everyone's a spirit soul, but they have the potential of being the devotees of this Lord. And therefore, he engaged his brilliance, his intelligence. When he is looking out of his balcony in San Francisco, he saw the flatbed truck. We all see flatbed trucks. How many of you thought this can become Lord Jagannath's chariot? But he saw Lord Jagannath's chariot. Immediately got the devotees to use that. He saw temples. He sat in a park. He was chanting. He was asked about how many followers. I have many followers. Time is separating. And now when we look back and see how time has passed, the vision has unfolded. So Srila Prabhupada. So I would like to end by asking you, given this, so what is the focus of this? What is the main theme of this verse? What's the Sanskrit word? Ekadvam anupashyate. Meaning, you were saying, Jai Krishna. Okay, so qualitatively one and different, and therefore we should have one interest. And whose interest is that? Krishna's interest, the Supreme Lord's interest. And when we serve the interest of the Supreme Lord, then we will become joyful. So now, keeping this idea of oneness and quality and quantitatively, can you tell me how you would apply that in your interaction with others? And meaning people in general. Any idea? Gaura, always like to hear you. Yeah. Oh, thank you very much for that, Mike.
Hare Krishna.
Switch it on for a... Oh, maybe it's off there on the amp. Gaura, come.
Well, I think I would just start by, in my general interactions, trying to remember that Krishna is within the heart of the person I'm talking to. Because very often I deal very unconsciously with people, and I don't see them as an actual part of Krishna. So
Okay.
just to, when I'm talking to someone, talk to them with the consciousness that Krishna resides within this person.
Thank you very much for that. And as a devotee, generally, what's your motivation when you interact with people? Thank you. How can you serve them so that they can become closer to Krishna? It's working now. Thanks. All right, give us another, some practical activities that you're doing in which the idea of ekadvam can be applied. Jai Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. So I mean, just in general, when we're, for instance, we're serving prasadam out, not thinking about I'm going to sit down and enjoy, this prasadam for myself. Not even thinking that, okay, this person's going to enjoy this prasadam, but actually thinking that this is an opportunity for meditation on Krishna. And I'm giving this out not for any enjoyment on both of our parts, but for Krishna's enjoyment.
Okay, so service by way of prasadam, because that is serving the interest of Krishna, to allow the consciousness of persons to move from covered to budding to eventually one day blooming, simply through prasad. What else? Gagamad? Mataji?
Fair enough. I've heard many, some say they want to serve humans.
It's a little louder, Mataji.
I've heard that, fair enough, you want to serve humans, but humans have not played their role. If they were awakened to all the knowledge that you have spoken about now, and they would not show such aggression to the natural world. When you have the natural world, we say Mahakali has a Sanskrit word to say she who is nature. And Lord Vishnu's name is, Sanskrit name is Bija Kartre, him who created nature, and Bijad Yakshaya, him who is the Lord of the root cause that is nature. As we see, we want to teach humans about Krishna, but they have not played their role in showing their oneness. They show much aggression to the natural world. We all know it in the oceans, towards the whales, the dolphins, the elephants, the lions. If they could replace the jungles with their materialistic inventions, they would do so. So I just want to add this, fair enough.
Do you have a question, or is that a lecture?
I just want to say that, I was just reading the holy Kali Sahasranama Stotram this morning, and I see that Mahakali, she has a Sanskrit name to say that she is the remover of darkness. She's the goddess of time. She also has 3 names to say that she is Radha, Radhya, Radhika, which means she who is the beloved of Krishna. She is also Rukmani, the wife of Krishna, and the jewel of all circumstances. And I just want to say that she is nature itself. And
thank you very much. I think you did a nice analysis in your reading, and the first part of it, in which you mentioned the antagonism and aggression of the living entities towards this world by way of destroying our nature, is really a tragedy, because we have not understood our responsibility to the world. And that is the independence, the self-centered, self-centric selfishness of the living entity, exercising a choice away from what the interest of the Supreme Lord is. The Vedic civilization, if practiced properly, looks after the world. This planet is known as Mother Bhumi, and therefore, who would desecrate his own mother? So, indeed, that's a tragedy, and we acknowledge that your observation is correct. Therefore, devotees, it behoves devotees to be able to practice proper etiquettes in all respects. We shouldn't see devotees throwing papers out of windows. We shouldn't see devotees walk by a paper lying in the temple grounds thinking it's the servants or the maids, workers' duty to pick it up. It's our temple, it's our home. Pick it up. Put it in the bin. And somebody else who watches you, like Mataji, will see this devotee is practicing ekadvam, because it's not, it is Krishna's house. And therefore, let me do what I can. Because if you're living in your own house, you won't leave litter everywhere. You'll pick it up. So it's okay. This brings us back to humility. Can we pick it up? Can we pick somebody else's litter up? So, although the task of any persons engaging in some kind of eco campaign is a very difficult one, in the absence of Krishna consciousness it's even more difficult, because it's just some external humanitarian activity. As far as the mention of Kali, she's also, I suppose you brought it up now, it's a period in society where Hindus are worshipping Mother Durga. So, just to conclude, in response to you, Kali is also described by Srila Prabhupada as the ghastly form of material nature. And indeed, if you want to be ghastly towards Krishna's nature, then his material nature will become ghastly towards you. Therefore, we have all the reactions in this world of disease, unprecedented weather changes, earthquakes, disasters. People, I have observed personally, I'm not sure if others have observed, people are leaving their bodies earlier. Now we're hearing people in 40s, 50s are just capping it, right? So there's a change, and societies, the world is reacting. And also, material nature, Mother Bhumi is going to withdraw herself so much, there'll be no water. All your vegetation will be stunted, small, no nutrition in them at all. You got to catch a wake up, they say. Literally stop to smell the roses, if you can grow them in the first place. So, Kali, to give you the background and conclude here, Krishna's energy, Yoga Maya, some sources describe her as a separate energy, and some indicate that she's a partial energy of Srimati Radharani. But Yoga Maya is the energy that facilitates the spiritual pastimes of the devotees and Sri Krishna himself. So Yoga Maya is that energy in the spiritual world and works here in this world too to facilitate Krishna's pastimes. Not only in Goloka Vrindavan, but the fact that we come together in kirtan and take prasad and all that is in the internal energy of the Lord. But when this material world is created, Mataji, you following? So to create the material world, Krishna doesn't directly create the material world. His expansion through Balaram, Mahavishnu, looks towards his consort Ramadevi. And by that glance, the glance becomes Shambhu. And that Shambhu interacts with the shadow potency of Ramadevi, who is Durga. That Shambhu, Sadashiva and Parvati then reside in Sadashiv Loka, which is halfway between the material and spiritual worlds. And that same Sadashiva then expands into every universe, millions of Sadashivas. And he resides there as Parvati and Shiva reside in the Himalayas. So, in Kailash. So when Parvati decides to go to work to give the living entities their punishment, their reactions. Then she becomes Kali or Durga.